Assalamualaikum and welcome to another episode of the ZoShow. This is where we talk about inspiring topics. We often have guests on the show and we discuss topics which will essentially inspire and provide useful tips, educational advice. And we also hear about stories from people who, which can often provide lessons for the future. And hopefully some of those lessons can help our viewers and listeners as well. This is episode 4, and my guest for this evening is a good friend of mine, somebody who works in the sales industry, sales sector. He's been on previous editions of the ZoShow before. Mr. Zafran Khan, how are you doing?
Walaikum salam. Zo, thank you very much for inviting me to your ZoShow. A ZoShow that started in a lockdown a few years ago, and it's just moved, and how you've transformed into, onto the traditional. Absolutely fantastic to be here and be part of your, the ZoShow.
Yeah. Bit of history, a bit of background, bit of history for people actually. So Zafran was, I believe he was my third guest actually when I first started during the initial lockdown. Around sort of April 2020 time, he's kindly agreed to be a guest on that show, and then he featured again on a different platform last year, I believe. So it's great to have you on actually for a third time now. And I'm actually really excited to hear what you've been up to since then. And to hear all about the world of sales and customer service and your own journey, particularly your own journey actually, because I know, the journey that you've had and the experiences that you've gone through, I'm pretty sure a lot of people can resonate towards that. And I hope people who are listening and watching, can pick something up. And for those of you, who are watching on the YouTube channel as well, please leave your comments. Do subscribe to the ZoShow channel. But let's start anyway, Zafran, with an introduction about yourself.
Yes, my name is Zafran Khan. 30 years I've been involved in direct sales, and that's been combined with business to business and B2C, which is business to consumer. But it all started first in business to consumer. And then the later part of my sales journey then transformed into business to business, and I worked with some of big major corporate companies. But my background started off in home improvements, and the home improvements industry was double glazing. And obviously, I know double glazing, when you hear that, people tend to get scared of, oh God, double glazers again. Back in the 90s, 80s and 90s, it was a big, massive industry, still is. But back then, it was purely all, cold calling and so forth. So you had not just one double glazing, you had some quite few double glazing companies. So I had, I did my 10 to 11 years of that journey. Started off all with working, from knocking doors, and I worked myself up. And the later stage, I got into stage where I was sales manager, running the sales side and running the branch on its own. So it gave me a lot of, I'll say that was my main sort of school, as you can say, for sales, that opened up so many opportunities that led on to working in the education sector, in the medical sector as well. So it gave me a lot of exposure.
What is it about sales itself? Like what is it about, when you got into sales and you started working in sales, like, what was it about sales that made you think, I want to get into this?
What it is, like coming from, the Asian traditional, families, it's all about, right, you've got to become a doctor. It's all about being doctor, engineers, accountants, lawyers, the traditional. So I was slightly different. I mean, I come from the family of 7 siblings, right? 7 of us. Yeah. And we've all, different. But I've been completely different because I wanted to do something that inspired for me. Yes, my father wanted me down the traditional side, but I used to challenge my father, and I say, well, there's so many other scoops, there's other areas, not just the traditional, and I want to do something different where I'm going to be happy. And going back to your questions though, that you said, what inspired me? What inspired me as a young age, and I know this is going to sound probably daft, right, but when I saw somebody back then, going back in the early part of the 80s, what you had was, you used to have insurance, company, reps that used to come to your house, because everybody had like a like some form of a insurance policy, and they used to come and to collect. That inspired me when somebody came in with a suitcase, and I was there sitting with my father while he was collecting money for one of their policies. And from that moment onwards, I thought, I want to get into a job where you wear a suit. And it's a traditional, suitcase. That was the motivational for me. And as I got, older, and when I went to college, looking back, I mean, I wanted, at one stage, yes, I want to go, uni and, finish off because I was doing a business and finance. And, but at the same time, I got myself a job, and that was in sales. So when I got into that job and I saw the progression, I saw the bigger picture of it, I thought, well, I'm not going to go and do 3 years at university. I'm already here doing that. I want to experience and carry on from there. So that's, how I did it. And I chose myself. And when you go back to your father and say, to the family, I'm knocking doors, and it's, so they couldn't understand, what's this. But as, time went on, they saw that, it's a massive, it is an industry. And I say sales is a big, massive industry. But in the UK as well, what you've got is it's got sort of bad name, sales. Everybody tends to, not look at that. But if you're in America and those kind of places and you say, sales, it's massive. It's a different kind of ball game there to here. Sales is made me mature because I went in as a young 18-year-old. And now I'm 47, so 30 odd years now, being in that industry, and work with some of the fantastic people, makes you maturity, because you're dealing with all types of people. And that's, and that's what, fascinating. That's what I live and breathe. Very passionate. And I always say to people when I give a recommendation and I give, advice that, do something that you're happy with, but it can give you more, and where your enthusiasm, your passion, your determination, everything, comes into it. Not do something that, it's just, it's going nowhere. And so, so that was...
go all in, make that commitment. And I think you've definitely proven that because you're also involved in, consulting and working with other organizations, which I think you work for FSB.
I mean, 6 years ago, my journey stopped, working for, company and set up myself. But from day one, working as an employee, as you know yourself, Zo, you're the employee as well. It brings a lot of, benefits there. It's got so much because, you're salaried, everything is done. And I know it sounds funny, but, 6 years ago when I was made redundant second time, and that's when I decided that, I want to do something for, for myself. I didn't know where to start. Because when you work in an organization, everything is in the background. You don't see it. You just do your job role. And then, you deliver, you wait for your KPIs to get delivered. And then it's a case of, on that, on a specific date of the month, you're waiting for your, nice salary, to come in and say, yeah, I'm on good commission, paycheck, payday. And that's where, we don't know what goes behind it. But when I said myself, I went to my friends that, were in business, who are already doing, been working for themselves. Right, I need an accountant. Where do I go? Where to find? And I didn't know that for me, that was quite, daunting, a part, because now you're not just a business or sole trader or a business owner. You're everything. You are the director of that company. You are the customer service, the department. You're the accounts. So it's everything. So, but that 6 years has helped me a lot because I worked with all types of business industry, made a lot of connections, made a lot of friends. And it kind of helped because everybody helped. You want accounting? Well, I recommend him. I recommend her. So it's been like a jigsaw puzzle where everybody had a piece and they wanted to fit that piece for you. So I learned a lot in the business industry over the last 6 years.
How do you think that's? How do you think because every industry evolves and goes through changes. And there's always a new way of doing things, and particularly with particularly with the introduction and involvement of digital and also like technology never stops, but at the same time I almost feel like technology impacts every industry out there, and I'm pretty sure within sales things have evolved and changed over the years. What things maybe have you learned in the last few years with the way people are interacting now with products, with services, kind of how is it? How's it been?
Digital obviously, came in, quite a long time ago, right? So there wasn't that much involved.
Yeah.
But over the last, especially, over the last 4 years, it's been a challenging time. Now, and I don't want to use that word because people don't remember that, the pandemic that we had, the lockdown.
Yeah.
It was actually in that which I learned quite a lot, new skills, because you had to adapt and change. That was fast, and you had to transform that very quickly. Otherwise, like you mentioned technologies, they're never stopping. We're living in a fast-paced digital world. New things are coming on very fast, and all things seem to be dying out. So if you're not ready on it, you've missed that boat, and that's how fast it has been.
Yeah.
But like I say, sales is part of every industry. At the moment, people like to, not get sold to, but like to sell. So everybody's selling, one way, another. And in every, industry, sales are the ones that brings the revenue to the world, and then everybody lives off of that. And I always, say that a lot of businesses that are out there who haven't got sales, they need to, because they'll generate the more revenue and bring in more opportunities for you, because they create opportunities. And going back to your question, that's what it was, because working with businesses, okay, now when businesses stop everything, okay, so all the contacts that you have of them, they stop, because I can't ring the office now because nobody's there in the office, everybody's at home. So I looked at, well, okay, I need to reach out to the masses. And then that's where my sales hat came on, and the experience that, all right, I need to create an opportunity. What do I do? Video content. Before, it was all about being in a nice place, enjoying a nice time, uploading pictures, little video here so people can see you're having a great time. People like it, people like comments. It was no more to that. And now I need to reach out. I need to make noise. Well, how do I do it? First of all, I went to, good, video contents like yourself, and there's a few others as well. They're always putting out a lot of contents out there. I want to see the exposure, the other side of it, what's the reach and how it's done. And then I saw a little of that. I thought, right, everything that I, advise on the benefits that I do, people need to hear. But that wasn't about, doing your pitch and doing your selling. It's about knowing people, letting people know, because all the businesses working from home now, and suddenly every shop, you're talking to a screen, you don't know if someone's going to listen to other side, because we're living in a digital world, and it's a massive world. So people need to know who you are. So I thought, well, I can't become an actor because I'm not an actor. I thought, well, be yourself, like I would walk into a room, and just how people will expect me at their business premises or at business network or whatever it may be, and be yourself. And I just talked about the service that I do, we provide, how can we help them, how they can, benefit, and that was it. And it just been amazing. First of all, a lot of the contacts that I made on there that helped me straight after we came out of the pandemic. So I had that side of it as well. But if you don't change yourself adapt to the new things, you will be left behind. Because as you know yourself, a lot of businesses, they stopped and they folded purely simply because some couldn't grasp with the change. And we're now living in a digital world. Every day you hear another big business has closed and they've moved all their products online. So you've got to be part of that digital world. And if you're not part of that, digital world, then I'm sorry, but the new generation that we're living in, it's all digital orientated, and you know more about that because you're that's in the industry, and you know more about that.
When I'm interested to know actually, when the pandemic first hit, obviously a lot of businesses, a lot of high street businesses had to close, and even I'm sure a lot of other businesses suffered. I think all businesses had challenges. The stress, there's the kind of the stress and anxiety that comes with that. Must be would have been absolutely terrible. And I remember being self-employed at the time. Again, what I went through. Did you also have a similar sort of experience in terms of when a business came to you and said, if someone came to you and said, I'm struggling through this, were you also stressed, or was it just a case of like, were you already kind of prepared for it? So,
I was prepared because
really knew.
people say, because like, my sort, like again, going back to my sales, I've always been field based, but I've been working from home, so I had the territory. So, it's always, we only went into the office if we needed to, for the meetings. Otherwise, you was on your patch and, you liaise with your person that does, who's above you, sitting in coffee shops. So for me, working from home, I've been doing that for, before the pandemic, 15 years before that. So that side, I wasn't, the only thing that the new change was because it was everybody's at home. Your children's at home, your wife's home, everything's happening from home. So that was a challenging, a bit. But again, it was a great time as well. Also, and again, a lot of businesses never been in that kind of environment. It was a new culture, but in a way, it was a new thing for everything, for all of us, because we never ever been locked in the house. We never seen a whole world. Will stop. Or if you've read about it, or you thought, if you're predicting on the future, you're thinking, well, that's going to be happening in my time. It's like watching a movie. It's not going to happen in the real world, and it did. But it made us all realize in different aspects, and especially, you've got to be adopting. I was talking to you earlier, and it's all about learning new skills. You have to learn new skills, and how do you do it? And that was one opportunity they gave. And a lot of people that I also spoke to who wanted to do better, they says, some went back and did some online course that related to their work, just to upskill because of time, that change. And that's where the successful people are, who take that time, who take the opportunity, utilize it themselves. It's about self-reflection, moving away from other things, personal, but then bringing the work growth into it as well.
Yeah. Just talking about the customer service or the customer relationship side of sales now, and having worked with numerous individuals and businesses yourself, what would you think, like, to you, for yourself and for people listening and watching this now, what tips have you got for people who, let's say, like, are just either getting into business, starting a business? What's the first bit of advice you'd give them?
The first bit of advice that I would firstly give is, okay, there's so many things you can do. Sometimes, people will do something because other person is doing it. Everybody's destiny is written, differently. Just because you might be doing well doesn't mean that that's going to happen to me. I always say, be passionate in what you do and believe in yourself, and then go for it. Doesn't matter what people will say. You're going to get good people who are going to encourage you. That's the group that you have to stick with and be with. That's the first thing. And there'll be other groups where they'll say, not this time. Look at the economy, and they see, they throw you all sorts. But follow your heart, follow your passion. Look at your set skills, what you're good at, and then, do that. And whichever route you go into, do plenty of research first, how the market's like, and then go for it. Because if you don't, if you don't try it, you're not going to know. And two things that you do need, and I'm a great believer of, and when you come to the business, first of all, you need to be patient. You need a lot of patience, because it can be a rocky road. You might start off with so many challenges before it might go, smooth for you. So you need a lot of bags of, patience and risk, because there are going to be times where you're going to take risks, and business is all about patient risk. And if you've got those two credentials, then I'll say, set up whatever business you do, but you have to surround yourself with positive people. Find the people that make things happen for you, who encourage you, because in the business world, that's the way you live, because you negative will never get you anywhere. So that's that's sort of the tip that I give. And then, when you're there, a lot of people will do business plans. Yeah, business plan is very, very important. You need to have that. But sometimes people follow the business plan and it doesn't work out to be. Business plan is like, you have to have that if you're going to go to a bank or something to get yourself, a loan for your business. They need to see those numbers. But that doesn't mean that those actual numbers are going to happen. I always recommend you have to have mentors, business coaches, business advisors, because they will see your business from a different point of view, but they'll say things which me and you as I won't see. And they'll say what they look at, and so you have to have that, a mentor, because it might not go well for you. You need to talk. You need that uplift. You need that motivation. So business coaches, business mentors, every business needs that. It's very important. Because like I said, because they will then encourage you and say, right, don't try this or try that, and they also will motivate you along that journey as well.
What are the biggest lessons would you say that you discovered when you first started out either in consulting or just sales in general?
For me, especially, the biggest thing that I've learned is that there are a lot of business out there, okay, who've invested heavily in their business. They've got everything that they need from the social media side, but yet themselves haven't got ability, because in sales you need two, business owners and directors need two things, the biggest you need. One is, sales, and second, you need ability to sell and ability to negotiate. Mm-hmm. Yeah, communication is very, very, important on that aspect. And also a lot of businesses who didn't know how to sell themselves, and they were struggling at that side, because once I analysed them, and did a fact find, with them, I says, well, you don't know what you're doing, because as a business, you need to know your trend. You need to study your competition. You also need to study your objections that are out there. The customer client, journey. How do you get them? When they come, how do you, keep them? How do you prospect them? So there's so many different, sort of challenges. And a lot of business, didn't have that, of ability. And it's like rewiring, and it's like ego factor with someone like, business 20 years, 30 years established. It has. But you have to, and that was a shocking part, because I thought, the business will know everything. But again, it's it's an individual thing that you have to have that. A lot of businesses that have got sales in place is because they've learnt themselves. They understand, because it's their business, their culture, right? And they know which people to bring for that kind of that will fit into that environment. Mm-hmm. A lot of businesses, didn't, or a lot of businesses needed, at first they neglected something. Now they need, sales. Sales is not just, here I'm sitting there, I'm going to buy something. Sales is actually, there's a mechanism, there's more to it that goes in, because you have to ask the right question, because you got to find out straight away, is this person that's come in, is he a want or is he a need? And you have to identify, and there's a process that works, along that. And once, the business owners understand that, then they understand their product, they understand their competition, the pattern, because it's always changing. And then you have to raise your game according to that pattern. And then that's why you'll be successful.
Yeah. I mean, business is always evolving, isn't it? And I think we've spoken before in previous interviews about, how business is also now generated through platforms such as social media, and how that plays such an integral part. I think so. Just the last point before we move on to the break, in a few minutes' time, is how important do you think social media is? The role of social media. How important do you think that is now in the world of business?
I'll give you two angles. At first, when I was in the employee industry, they had social media. It didn't bother me. Because it's company, people find out when people, when I was sitting with clients, say, there's a social media, there's the website, go see, because I'm there to do my role, and that was more important to me, at that time. Didn't apply that, that much, but to the business owners, it did. But when you had to sell yourself, had to put your self content out into the social media, that's when I said, it's very, very important. Everybody, whoever you meet in the business world, the first thing say, right, okay, are you linked on your Facebook? That's the first question. Okay, business cards we still give out, but most of the time I say, well, why do I need a business card when I can find you on LinkedIn or Instagram or whichever social media platforms? Very important, because that's where we go to first. And so every business needs that, and everybody needs that. You have to be out there, because that's the market we're living in now. And if you're not, when we see someone and there's no details on there about them, we kind of brush to a side, don't we? We say, that to me, because the more information that's there, the more it appeals to you, the more you're thinking, I want to connect with that guy, or I want to connect with that company, what's that service is about? And the less you see, you think to yourself, and all this doubt stuff. You start getting all the questions. Well, right, okay. Is this the company? Is it real? Is it unreal? So therefore, and that's the first thing that people go to. So you have to have social media, but you can't just have a social media. You got to know how it works. You've got to know your platform. Social media. You've got Facebook, you've got Instagram, you've got LinkedIn, LinkedIn might work for you in a way that might not work for me, but I've got to now understand which social platform works for me, and the one that works for me with algorithms, with the content, and then that's the one I need to. And if the people listen, they think, well, how do I know that? Then go to the contact people who do a lot of social, and they will tell you exactly what service you've got, what you've got. And you need them as well into your business, because you can do things yourself, but there's a right time and a right place to put things out if you want reach massive algorithms.
I often find people get carried away with trying to be on every platform, and then they don't define their audience, which is then that's what affects their profile and their credibility. It is it's a really fascinating topic actually, and actually we are going to move into a break now. So after the break, we will touch on a few more sales and customer service related things with Zafran, but we are also going to dive deeper actually into Zafran's story, his own story, his own journey, and actually there'll be a lot there that I can that we can get stuck into. Like I said, hopefully we can learn quite a few things there. So don't go anywhere, everyone. Please do stay tuned to Unity FM. And we'll be back with Zafran Khan very soon. I just paused it there just before 26 minutes, and then we just crack on. So that was good. That was quite in depth actually. A lot of the sales. What I try and do is the first half. I try and talk. I try and talk about the person's like industry, like skills, specialisms. What they're about, and then some useful tips not there. But now the second half. It's going to be more about you, if that's all right. Yourself. If there's anything that you're comfortable talking about, like I said, just let me know. But it's about your family, like a little bit about you, more about you, maybe a little bit about your family, your upbringing, the lessons that you learned when you were younger, growing up. Like Vikash was really good at that. He spoke about when he grew up, 70s, his dad, all that sort of stuff. So. A lot of the second half now is going to be about yourself and what you've been through, and then you can talk about the evolution of this is how I did this, your own podcast. Mention it. Honestly, go for it. Like say, I've got my own podcast now. You do Cobra Club. It's more so. This is more about you and your journey now. And so, as much as I don't want to say sell yourself, I do want you to take pride in what you've done. And just get it in there, because if people watch this and listen to it back. It's always nice when I hear things like, who was that guest who you had on and he runs his own network, or that guy who, that person you had on, I've got his details. It's really rewarding for me, you know what I mean? Because I love helping.
Because it is now.
I love connecting people.
And this is, because I, listen to radio in the car, always do. I've always, took part in some of the discussions, especially on the Bibbs Asian network and TalkSport, when it happened, So it is there, but it's not like the online version of it, because you see the light, you see who's made a comment. You don't know, because everything's happening outside. But suddenly, a year later, somebody might turn on and say, you know what, that's Zaf, I want to speak to him because I want to talk about sales. And people do remember, because we remember when I'm in the car, listen to radio, how many times I like that guest, I like that, who's that, and they give details. I want that, because you just don't know. So because
the reach here is I think it's
reach is massive, different, because you haven't just got one sector, you got all sorts of people listening.
More than Akivars, you know what I mean? I enjoyed Akivars, but here, it's
no,
Dab Radio,
because why?
Website.
It's Unity FM. It's on it's on frequency modulation. It's on the FM platform. It's got Dab. Because I listen to it, myself.
And I didn't know actually. I think my uncle said that he goes, because it's Dab. He said you can get it, or you can get it all over the world.
Of course, because it's Dab Digital. If you've got Dab Digital, so you can catch it anywhere. People like all right, it's a West Midland thing. But you got people listening in London because it's that.
You reach everywhere.
Massive reach.
So we'll talk more about yourself in the second half. And like I said, be as open as you, be as comfortable as you want, but just be open about your upbringing. This is what I came through. I've got my family now. This is what my kids are learning now about business or sales or whatever. So we'll touch on more about the personal side of it now. Do you know what I mean? Salam everyone, welcome back to the ZoShow. I've got the excellent Zafran Khan on tonight, sales expert, somebody who's been on my show previously. Just before the break, we were talking with Zafran about the world of sales, about customer service. He was giving some really useful tips and advice for people who are either in business or going into business. So a lot of educational material. Hopefully people did tune in. If you're back with us now, we're going to be discussing with Zafran now more about his own journey and what he's been through, what he's lived through. Zafran is somebody, like I said, who is a sales specialist, a sales expert. But he's also somebody who's worked very hard at his trade. He's learned a lot about his industry, spent a lot of years working at it and refining it, I'm sure. So what we're going to do now is just talk to Zaf a little bit about his upbringing and just going back to, let's say, the roots of that. So Zaf, just talk to me a little bit about, what was it like kind of growing up, when you were growing up and when you were first, like, let's say, you may not have been into sales at that point, but growing up, as a young Asian lad, in the Midlands, in Birmingham, what was that like? And also, you mentioned that you were one of 7 children, I believe you said.
Yeah.
So what was it like actually kind of growing up in that environment as part of a large family?
Well, environment was great. My child upbringing was fantastic. From my parents and my siblings who are a lot older than me. It was, a religious family, but at the same time, it wasn't hardcore, strict religion. He was nice. My father, he's a very outgoing, visionary person. So even though, first generation, moving here in the late, my father came into this country in the late, in the early 50s.
Yes.
So these complete, and to obviously leave their country, come here, and then raise us. When I was born in 76. In the mid 70s. So the challenges were different. With our father compared to how I am with my children. That was brilliant. My siblings were great, but apart from my sister who's younger than me, the rest, the 5 older of my siblings, they're not like my brothers and they're normal like friends. They were like parents to me because there's a massive gaps between me and my older sort of brothers. So they were more like my sister olders were like more like mum role, and my older 2 brothers, they were my father role. So I had that, and my youngest sister, she was very close because she was like there's 5 gap between me and her. She was very good because she could understand and we could relate to each other. But apart from that, they were brilliant. My sister and brothers olders, but they were more father and mother on. If mum and dad are about, they kind of put their hat on. Yeah. But it was a very good upbringing. Again, it was different challenges to now because don't forget, back then in the late 70s and the 80s, we had a lot of racism. There was extreme right wing parts out there. So those were things that were happening. But at the same time, it was fantastic as well.
Yeah. Did you yourself ever experience any discrimination or anything growing up?
To be fair, I haven't. And I have been to, I've worked in, or I've covered territory in my sales up and down the country. There is not an area that I haven't been to or a house that I haven't been to. And I worked in the lower dem areas as well, not like calling it, but, council estate on the demographically. And some of the areas and towns, if I was to mention, they haven't seen an Asian person. And I can give you one example where I went to one area, not going to mention the name where it is, and as soon as they opened the door, they says that the only person Asian that we know was the Kumars are 42.
Yeah.
And I start laughing. I says, well, I'm not the Kumars, but I'm the Khan. It's the Khans here. And then and he's a laugh and a joke, and Australian, but there was discrimination. Yeah, I mean, when I, as a lad, going throughout the streets playing, we had it, coming, but it just came from one year, went to another year, because that's how it was. Didn't expect. The only time I did little encounter myself was when I went into an area, and it was a hardcore NF National Front area, and that was when I first went in, got into sales, and that was actually my 3rd or 4th day. And my team leader, they dropped us off in an area, and next to I saw on the walls, NF. But you could feel, the surrounding was like negative. I thought, things don't feel right here. And I remember knocking on the door, and one gentleman said to me that, he says, well, he didn't mind. He said, listen, you need to get off here because it's not nice. I didn't take anything of it. Moved on to another street, another house, and next to a brick went past, then a glass bottle, I thought, you know what, and then I saw a lot of groups of people coming. I thought, you know what, we need to get off this estate. So that's the only encounter I've had. Other than that, you know, verbally, you know, if you're going past someone said it, you know, it's kind of brushed. But apart from that, but I've been a quite, you know, lucky one. But I'm not a lucky one. It all come from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I've been quite, you know, fortunate in that. But again, you know, half the time, you know, it's there. And, you know, when it's there, if you trying to tackle it, you'll get more, but just brush it and you know, just move on. But you see, the difference between us growing up at that time and the children growing up now is that we were more streetwise. We knew if you got groups of, you know, youth gang, you know, on a corner, you know, we know that if you're on your own, you don't want to go past there. But as today youth, when I, you know, talk my children, you know, sometimes they don't have that. It's only people standing. They can't read that between us. We did. We were more streetwise because we didn't have internet. Well, there was nothing like that. It was on the, you know, playing the streets, and you only came home when the street lights came off. You knew it's now time to go home. Now's the time the door opened and your mum and dad are waiting for you. Other than that, you keep playing, and whether like, and we were always out, you know, playing the physical stuff in the park. So we will see, you know, different opportunities of that. And so because we were living more out on the streets, so we were more streetwise.
There's that closeness, you know, there was that different era. And I think you mentioned, you know, correct me if I'm wrong, were you the youngest in your of your siblings? Same as myself. So what, I was just going to say, like, you know, what was that like being the youngest of 7 siblings? And especially at that time, you know, growing up in an era where, you know, you obviously, the level of multiculturalism now in Birmingham was a lot less back then. But having older siblings, was that a big help to you?
Yeah, older siblings was, because you know what it is? It's their wisdom, what they've said 30-odd, 40-odd years ago, right? That kind of suddenly comes out now. You're thinking, oh gosh, now I know what that means. And it has a power impact and they've seen that journey, because, you know, what they tackled and what they faced is nothing compared to, you know, what we faced, you know, because, you know, especially in the 50s, 60s, 70s, it was completely different, you know, and, you know, the first generation that are listening now, they will, you know, they'll counter it, you know, when they had to go to work, how they had to, you know, deal with it, because of the language barrier. We've got the language because we've studied here, we're born here. So, you know, that plays, you know, a big part. But for them, it didn't. But it's their knowledge and their wisdom that, you know, that helped. And it was more about, like, look, don't tackle anything. How to prove to them through education. When I say education, I don't mean education as in traditional education. Education means whichever area you're in, that's education. Learn it from there and become good at that. And let your character, let you define others, make an impression on you of who you are. First impression, last impressions, and win hearts from that. Rather than, you know, doing through verb. If somebody's giving you a verbal abuse, you retaliate. It just gets nowhere. It just gets worse and worse. So through your actions. So they were more, you know, based on that. We need to raise our game. We need, you know, as an Asians, we've got to, and look, you know, everything, you know, is thriving, and a lot of people recall for that. That's how we were. We weren't, you know, told, right, you know, self-defense had to happen. Stand your feet, but don't cause. But if it comes for you and it's not your fault, then be self, you know, I'm losing a word here. You know, you have to have, you know, self-control and of it, and be yourself and defend yourself, but in the right way, in the right manner. And that whatever. Well, I'll say the uncles and the elders, you know, always, you know, used to say. You know, the elders at that time were, you know, they were our teachers as well. They all were father roles. Even in our masjids, in our mosques, the teachers there were all teachers, because they always said, what you're doing now, you know, they always predicted ahead. It's going to cost you if you don't do like this, if you don't do it like that, you can have impact like this. And there were more, even the schools, you know, the teachers at schools, there were more teachers as well. You know, they gave you massive, you know, advice on that. And sometimes, you know, they kind of, you know, play back, and you think, gosh, is that what that means? I didn't know that. But at that time, you just, you know, as a kid, as anything, they don't know anything. It's all about, you know, they don't know anything. But later on in life, because you're going to raise your game, you now become adult, and that all that comes back. So they were all about self-respect, respect others, gain respect, and don't abuse others or anything. It doesn't matter who they are. And so it was more of that than anything.
What's the biggest piece of advice or memorable? You mentioned wisdom before, but is there something that you remember and you think that stuck with me, when you were younger?
My father said to me, it says, at the end of the day, be yourself. Live with, doesn't matter where you are in the world or what you do, honesty. Honesty is part of our religion, but sometimes we neglect it. Yeah, honesty, value, integrity. These are the 3 things that learned, and that's that helped me on my journey. Just be yourself, be honest, and tell the truth, and whoever you with, love them, value them. Important, doesn't matter who they are, respect them, and you know what? And when all of that is what it refines your character, and that's why it shines you, and the work that you do, and you put all those into that. And these are kind of advice. They were like little, but they're they're powerful. The weight that carries on on that the impact there. It's massive. It's just exposure of that.
Yeah. It's always interesting because I find like whatever industry you work in is a reflection of your skills and what you've been through, and clearly you've worked really hard to get to where you are. You mentioned communication skills and that you need confidence. Is that something that was natural from a young age, or did you have to work at it?
No, the young age, it was quite natural in that, because I was quite outgoing person. That's because of my father, my brother. They were we all very outgoing. We always had visitors in our house. So I'm always going in as a young lad, serving, and then sitting with them. And differently, and plus my father, who's a, he is an imam. He was an imam. Yes. He's retired now. He was an imam in the masjid, and also he was a nasheed artist as well. One of the UK's, first, nasheed, reciting nasheeds and not in the praising of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So I used to go with him, and then my masjid, my teacher in the masjid, imam, he was training us up to do speeches, training us up to recite the Quran, do the Qiraat. So I used to do it in the masjid function. So that's where my confidence actually came from. And talking about that, the development side of it, and that's very important now, especially in the younger generation, because so I had that confidence. Then I made all sorts of friends, we were in school, all sorts. So that I was outgoing. So that kind of helped me. So I had that sort of foundation, very strong foundation, and then the rest just I built up, from there.
Yeah. How important do you think is how important do you think it is to, and this isn't just related to sales, but how important would you say it is to develop communication skills? Just in general?
Communication is very, very, very important. Because if you don't develop, because you have to. All right, I'll give an example. Okay, at home, we speak Urdu, Punjabi, Mirpuri, whatever the language it is, and you speak English as well, okay? And you're thinking, that's all it needs. That's not communication. Communication is with all types, people. So communication is having that confidence, don't be shy. That all comes out from that personal development. And that is, that's a key, that's very, very important. Our growing up of then to now is different, because I'm a parent myself, with 3, children. And the way, because they're more communicating, they got devices. But you have to have that, human, interaction, because that affects the younger generation more now than it did, to us, because we were still communicating. They didn't. So personal development at a very young age of communication is very important.
Yeah.
In whatever field you do. And you have to then take that, enhance that, brush that, and build up from there. Yeah. From there, it opens up, a lot of horizons just on that, little things of communication. Now we live in a world of communication, so you have to have those skills you're given to you, but you have to develop yourself as well. Yeah. Zoe used to, stutter a bit. So did I. It's funny to say this, but I used to stutter a lot. But honestly, I can say that when I came into the world of sales, my world of sales wasn't just sales; it was personal development. Because I'm a very involved with the, with a bit personal development world, which I can touch on a bit later. So communication on that, because I've got to speak to all sorts of people. Now, I started off first knocking doors. So you get good, bad, and the ugly. You're going to get someone at real, and it's more evening time, because the basic industry works in the evening, because everybody's home after, 6 o'clock. So it was 4 to 8. 7 o'clock, it's a football match or something programs on. You've just knocked on the door. And you'll get all sorts, because it's public now. You're dealing with all types of people. You're talking from good quality people right down to very low, minded people. and you have now invaded their space.
Yeah.
So they're either going to slam door, or they've just probably had an argument with, you know, had a massive barney with their loved ones, and suddenly you've knocked the door. You were at the wrong place, so you had to adapt, you know, and take the run. Basically, it's like being out there, let everybody throw everything at you, garbage, whatever, and you just don't say nothing.
I was just going to ask you actually, like, what can you think of, like, you know, a time where you mentioned, like, you know, catching someone at a bad time, or, you know, what was a I don't want to say memorable, but what was, you know, give us an example of let's say you knocked on someone's door and, you know, it wasn't a very nice experience.
See with me, I'm a bit, you know, sarcastic, so I'm a cheeky
Yeah,
type as well.
yeah.
So when somebody did that, I did it in a nice way.
Oh, right,
First of all, you know, we were trained, because I'm representing a company. It wasn't knocking door in an incident where I'm just going to knock it once and they're never going to see me again. I've got to come back there again. I'm going to keep going, because that's part of our patch, part of our area. So if I upset someone really bad, I'm going to come back there again, or the companies are going to come back there again, and then somebody else is going to knock that door, probably one of my, you know, ex-fellow, you know, colleagues. So you had to take that into consideration, because you represented the company, integrity, so your professionalism. But at the same time, to diffuse that, you know, I'll then, you know, wind up someone. I knocked on the door once, and the guy come out, you know, start ranting and shouting, and I start, you know, winding, oh, I've had enough of you lot coming up. And I says, well, yeah, I've had it, and I gave it back, and just winding him up, and he got to a stage where he says, you know what, I'm going to take the picture because you're being really, really cheeky. I'm going to go to the press, and I'm going to go I says, you know what, just do whatever you like. and then I came off the door, and he's getting a bit aggressive, and I'm just winding him up. He's swearing and everything. I says, yeah, whatever. And I did wind him up to so much that he had to ring in. You know, he rang into the, you know, into the brand, into the office, and he says that, you know, what do we call this? I've got his leaflet here. He was really cheeky, but they knew that. But they said, what happened? But I said I was cheeky in a nice way up to it, because he's winding me up, so I went and gave him some back. But I knew where to draw a line, because at the end of the day, I've gone to him. He hasn't come to me, so therefore, you know, wherever happens, you've got to take it on.
Yeah. So you handled that really. You actually handled it really well. You know, whereas a lot of other people may have got offended. It might let it ruin their day and stuff, and whatever.
That's, I mean, like, you know, moving to, you know, some of the sales that, you know, when I training and working with salespeople, that's the first sort of thing I'll say to them, that when you're dealing with clients, you're going to deal with it in all sorts of moments. Yeah. Sometimes they're going to do verbally. First of all, you've got to have, like I said at the start, patience. You know, I talk patient communication. Yeah. You've got to have loads of patience.
And build resilience.
And resilience is massive, because you have to have that, and you have to have the cool head. Attitude has to be in the right, because at the end of the day, that what people at that time, you might be abusive now to me, but 6 months time you're not, because how I handled you and how I showed my professionalism to you, you remember. And the biggest thing I say to people, it doesn't matter what service, what product, what price, or what, you know, location, whatever you have, people buy off people do business if they like it, and it all comes down to like. So wherever you are, you know, come across as positive, leave a positive impact at them. So that was nice, because especially when you're dealing with, you know, inside, you know, outside the public, because you don't know who's behind that door, and you're going from, you know, Asians to all sorts of, you know, cultural people, right, backgrounds, and they're all different. So you had to have that and be expected that if somebody is nasty, they just be nasty. You just, you know, play cool. Yeah, you know, deep down there's certain things that, you know, they said to you, my body boiling, I think, you know what I mean, if there's somebody else on a lamping, but you just had to beat that within you and move on.
Yeah, to overcome it. Yeah. And what's fascinating is that you've developed so many skills over the years, not just sales, and now those skills have become transferable, because you also run your own podcast now as well. You're responsible, you know, for things like networking.
Honestly,
groups and
this is going to sound, you know, weird, you know, to the listeners, but again, my sales was my college, it was my primary school, it was my school, secondary, it was my college, and it was my university. Because, you know, being at the young age, you had to learn everything, and you had to learn different types of skills and take it. Sometimes those skills might not be used, but like you just said, Zo, throughout your life, throughout my journey, later on, they have, and I'm thinking, well, where did I get that from? And it's amazing how much your brain and your body stores everything. and then when you need it and it comes out. So sales is everything. It's the middle part, it's the engine of the whole, because you have to have your accounts, you have to have your legal, right? In a business, you have to have your legal. That has to be very important. You have to have your accounts because they have to work, but then you have to have your sales and marketing, because that's what delivers. So people next, and with that, a lot of skills are needed, because the person you're dealing with, language. All right, you got to switch, from being, talking to an average Joe blog person to a professional person. So if you're sitting with somebody, in the financial side, or doctor, or someone who's well educated, you have to raise your language as well. And we teach, and we learn all of those as well. So you have to do a lot of reading. Not just normal, in those days, obviously we had newspapers. So I know it sounds daft, but Financial Times, Daily Telegraph, higher end newspaper, because of your vocabulary and of your thingy, of your language. And then you have to adapt and change to the person you are. So if I'm sitting with someone average and he's talking slang, then you need to know your slangs as well. So that's when I say communication. People say, well, I've got communication, I've got this, and I don't need communication. You do. Communication skills is very important. Listening skills. And so, because we have to learn more, listen more, and talk less, what the person's saying, what they really want.
You do need
you had to learn all of that. It's not what you ask, it's how you ask. And there's a process that goes, behind that. Then you had to learn different types of cultures as well. If you're going to break into that culture, you've got to provide your product and service. You've got to know that, that culture. Because that wins hearts, and when you sit with them and you make them at ease, they know more about us. Kind of becomes easy as well, how they are, and body language is very, very important. So you had to learn, because 20% is communication, but 80% is body language. Just through that I can know this person's going to buy, or this person's going to use my service, just through reading body language, because you can lie verbally, you can hide all of that, but body language cannot lie. That reflects the truth out.
It's an interesting psychology, and actually I think as we kind of move into the as we move into the final stages here, I think it's one thing I wanted to say was actually, so we spoke earlier about if people are getting into business and tips around that. In terms of like younger people listening to this now, thinking like, I want to get into business, or I'm interested in sales, or currently work in sales. Given your years of experience, what sort of quick tips do you have for people who are either learning sales, or they want to improve sales, or even just general kind of customer service?
I mean, sales, marketing, customer services, they all
It's
come.
quite linked,
They all come to one. When you break the segment down, but they're all under one, because you got to have a sale of the product that person said. Then you have to have a customer service behind it. To obviously, because when things go wrong, who's gonna handle it? And there's a way, because the customers are ranting everything because they wanted that happen. He told me this, or she told me that. It's not happening. So delivery, so customer service, sale, they all come in one. If one piece is missing, it affects everything. What I say to people on that is, sales is very good industry, very, very massive industry. If you look at and you do the OTEs of that, you can earn as much as what the doctors are earning, but you've got to be good at your good game. Someone's talked to me about 30 years. It didn't all just happen to me on the plate. I had to learn that there are so many challenges that I had to go through to get to where I am now. And this is why in my sales that I teach what I've learned over 30 years with some of the best people in the industry. Some are still there, retired and still in touch with. Some obviously, passed away, but that's the industry, and I learned that quality. For me, first of all, is that you're gonna know what you want to do. There are people who tell you what to do, how to do it. That's great, that's fine. But I say to young people, follow your own path. What you good at? You look at your skills. Are you hands-on? Are you creative? Whatever you are, find that. And once you've established that, your skill is, of that area, then find a job related to that part. Because what happens is your passion and you're happy will come out. And when you're passionate about something, when you love something, and you see the scoop of it, because when I first came in, I'm a visionary person. I think ahead a lot in a goal setting. I want to see, right, nobody can define what's your future. Nobody knows. You only control your present, and you can't change your past. So it's the present that you hold on to. The future, no one knows. But you've still got to predict. You still got to do a forecast. And if you're working for an organization that has progression, and you can go further, go for it. That's the first thing. don't just come in and say, "Oh, sales quick money." Yes, it is, but all I can say is the best industry, but at the same time, is the worst industry as well. Honestly, so I've seen where relationships have packed up because of sales not coming in, nervous breakdowns of people, and these are the people and colleagues that I work with around me who've been affected of it and taken them on, because when in the sales, when the going gets tough and the tough gets tough, honestly, it can be the worst part you can be in. When you're not delivering, you're not hitting the KPIs, your sales manager, your sales director, everybody's at your back. It's a high pressured industry because they want business, and it's their delivery. Doesn't matter how it is, their training, there is no, you're only good as your yesterday's figures. Doesn't matter how wonderful you are or how many awards you've won, you're only good as your yesterday's figures. So look at the negative side first. Is that really for me? Because there's more to that. But once you find that sales is the place, doesn't matter which sales side you start from. Learn the trade, learn it good, and learn the right way. Again, I talked about integrity, I talked about value, I talked about honesty. That all plays a big part, especially when you're working for an organization. Okay, they've built, and you know yourselves how hard it is to build and to get credibility. But it's very, very easy. In a second, you can destroy all of that. And I've seen people in the past say, "Well, it's not my company, I'm working, they pay me wage." That's a wrong attitude, because when you're in the public, people dealing with you, you are the representation of the company. You are that marketing leaflet. You are that, that director of that company. It's you, because it's you that you're representing. So understand that very good, and then say to yourself, "Yeah, this is for me." Just like if you're going to go into accounting or engineering, whatever, it has to be right for you. And how does that come? By doing research, by talking to people in that industry. And now you can get so much information out there, like we touched on the digital. So those information's out there. Reach out to them. Don't just say, reach out to them and say, "This is what I want to do." Get the positives, but also get the negative side as well. So you come in as a balance, as a friend, so when the going gets tough, it's going to be like that. So you're already mentally, psychologically prepared for it. And then go for it. But it's a very good industry. You'll meet different types of people. And from there, you can enhance to other things. Massive doors open as well.
There's so much, because I think there is so much there, isn't it? Everything's accessible, and I think what you said there is spot on about the education side of it. Not just what you kind of given us today. There's so much information out there for people to learn, to grow. Everything's virtual online, and there's so many resources and everything. Just before we do, actually, we are at the end of the show, but just in the final few minutes, I always like to ask my guest for a final thought or reflection before we finish. So just something that you want to leave our listeners with, before we sign off. Anything that you want to say?
What I want to say is surround yourself with positive, surround yourself with quality people. Doesn't matter if that's in your personal, in your work, whatever it may be. It's that, because there's so much negativity out there. There's so much, because we got access to so much now. We came devices that carries so much information, and you can be a positive, and within a second you can come negative. So take all of that out. Surround yourself, and you are judged by the crowd that you're in, the people that you're with, the circle you're in. That plays a big part. When you surround yourself with quality people, it reflects into everything that you do. You learn confidence, and I say it doesn't matter who they are, find them and be with them. And
it creates a positive sense all round. It's absolutely wonderful, Zaf, honestly. And I was going to say it's been a pleasure having you on again. The third time that Zafran's been on my show. We mentioned that also Zafran, like I said, he runs a podcast. Again, you just want to quickly touch on
again, when you touched on earlier in the show that Zaf, learning about different skills. We were in lockdown, everything stopped. So how do I have to do? So I had to make a talking, a leaflet, as we call it, right, of myself. So I created then, I was invited to a few, podcasts, and I saw that, and I saw, the exposure of that, and I thought, what, this could be, great, not just for me, but for my guest I'm going to bring on, because two-way, it's networking, because, networking is all about, promoting, services to other people of who they are and what they do. And I thought, well, rather doing just that way, do it differently, just like you did with me. Journey, who's this person? How did he get into that area? So, by going to quite a few, attending, I thought, you know what, I want to do something myself where I give a platform to people. Again, most podcasts, people they charge, which is great. There's nothing. And then when I did it, and straight away I thought, I'm not going to charge anyone, because for me it's networking. It's like when you go to networking, you're promoting services. This way is going to help both of us, because there's two people bringing in two things. Doesn't matter who's the interviewer and who's the interviewee. But you've got, organisation, I've got organisation. When people see two people, say, well, he does that. It helps for, everybody, because everybody together, you can make a strong noise.
Yeah. Collaboration.
And collaboration is very, very important, and wasn't probably at first, but now it has. And I was dreading it. I thought, well, once we go out of this lockdown, I want the collaboration to, to carry on. It is carrying on. Yeah. Especially in the small business, industry that we both come from, is very important, because of club, rather than seeing that person as a continuous see as a club, because you learn the skills of them.
Yeah.
They had a challenge. How did they tackle it? What did they do? What was the process? You might be going through that challenge. Through that, by listening to somebody's or hearing somebody's journey, and they give you snippets, it kind of helps you. They give you tools, they give you ingredients that's going to say, you know what, there it is. Go fix that now. You got that problem, fix it. So
you can provide that wisdom.
So then I created that podcast, and then that gave, and I know you did my branding for me. I still do. It's not as effective, as I was doing it before, because it's online now, because obviously everything's back to normal and quite busy. But it's there, and I still do it when I need to. And it's very important, especially when some business comes to me and say a startup, or they want to establish them. That's when I'll say, well, I'll tell you what, let's jump on if you're comfortable. Let's do let's reach out to people, because people need to know, and people need to know when they can see. And the beauty is they're not reading, they're not in audio, they actually can see. So when they meet that person, they know exactly how they are, because they've already seen it. And that's the way forward now. So that's your industry. You know more the statistics of what I ask you. That's the way forward. Video content is out there. If people are not using video contents for anything, then something is missing. Rather writing a testimonial and saying that, you see, when somebody says it, look, I'm here, this is what I've done, this is how they helped me, it has more positive, more powerful impact. Because it reaches out to masses in seconds.
And that's the thing. And I think that links back to what we were saying, in terms of just before we sort of finish it, I think it links back to the whole kind of educational side of it, the resources. You've taken your skills to a podcast, and you're still doing things, and I think that's absolutely brilliant. And I think it's a great lesson and a great thing to end on.
Something I want to touch in there too, is ego. We're all born with ego, and ego is a very evil factor. And again, one of the tips of going back to something against sales is be prepared to learn. Because every sales industry you go, there's always they retry it. You think, I know that. No, never reinvent. Always go in as a novice that I'm learned, because you're going to pick up. And if you are prepared to like that, you will learn so much, and you'll take it, because you're prepared to learn. You're prepared to listen. I like listening to the younger person and older person as well. I never looked at, when people come on to sales, I say to them, you're coming here to learn off me, but I'm learning off you, because you got certain skills, and we are learning the minute we were born and the minute we die. We're learning. You can't tell yourself and say, I've mastered all of, you haven't. So be prepared to learn from younger peers and olders at the same time. And if you can adapt to that, that's what you got. Then you will be successful, because you're ready to you're ready to learn. If I say to you, all right, okay, you come into my training, I'm going to rewire you. If I'm going to reprogram you, it's now going back to NLP, neuro logistics programming. That's what it's about. Forget what you've learned. I'm going to rewire you now. This is the method that works. If you're not, if you come to ego and go, well, I'm not, I know how to do it, I've done it, I just want to do it. You're not going to go anywhere in life, because you're not prepared. And that's where it comes down to be prepared to listen, be prepared to learn, be prepared to take and develop. Always develop. And you'll see, and that will play big, massive impact and role in your work journey when future ahead.
I think that's fantastic, Zaf, honestly, and I think we are at the end of the show now. Like I said, just want to thank you again for coming on. Like I said, 3 times on the ZoShow. I really hope people have enjoyed all the wisdom and the lessons and the experiences that Zafran has shared. As I said, guys, these are real experiences, real conversations with real people. We will tag all the information on the YouTube channel, so please do like and subscribe to the channel, but also do follow Zaf as well. We will share his details, as I said, as we publish the episode. But that is the ZoShow for tonight, guys. and we'll be back for inshallah episode 5 the following week. Do stay tuned for updates about who the guest will be, and if you'd like to share your story as well, or your journey, or something inspiration that you want to share with our audience here, please do get in touch with Unity FM, or do comment and message me on the YouTube channel as well. But that is for tonight, guys. I'll be signing off now, and inshallah we'll catch you again on the ZoShow next week. Assalamu alaikum.